Hey, good evening, everyone. Another Tuesday evening. We can be looking at some matters of the heart and matters of relationships, matters that we have to deal with as human beings. Only be a short one this evening due to me still being on leave. So I'm just waiting for somebody just to clock in, and then we're going to be good to go. It's going to be a recap. We spent a couple of months looking at betrayal, various aspects, and even then there's certain things I've not looked at, but certainly good to have walked through this. Good evening, Sonia. Really good to see you this evening. I'm assuming you can hear me loud and clear, so I'm going to crack on with it because it's 7 o'clock and we need to be using time as best as we can, being it's only a short one this evening. Still on leave. I finish leave on Friday, and oh yeah, Tuesday thoughts. I like that. I like that very much. Thank you, Lindsay. I might even use it. If I get any money, I'll give you some commission. I like that. Tuesday thoughts. Yeah, it's a recap. Yeah, good to see you, even Dave. But actually, it's a recap. But what really makes the session comes alive? Good evening, Raymond. What makes the session comes alive is the questions and the comments that people interject, and I kind of enter into a dialogue. It's a bit like when I do presentations. Lindsay says, sure. Right. When I do presentations or workshops or seminars in person, certainly with presentations, what I really love is the Q&A. Because quite often you don't know where the Q&A, you don't know where it's going to come from. It keeps you on your toes. Most presenters don't like Q&A. I love it because it really kind of gets me going. So yeah, so good to see you all this evening. Good to see you, Jenny and Pepper. Yeah, anyone else who's watching, maybe not live, but you watch later on, and a lot of people do. And it's interesting, this particular subject matter on betrayal, it really has sparked a lot of conversation. Good evening, Helen. And again, anyone else who knows me, who have conversations, but you watch, but you don't participate, that's really, in fact, you're participating by watching. So thank you very much indeed. And might be good if you have a pen and paper with you just to take down some notes, and also just to ask a question, to contribute, just to kind of add some more energy to the session this evening. So we'll be looking at betrayal. Yeah, so my name is Delroy Hall. For those who may be watching for the first time, I'm a trained counsellor, teacher, lecturer for over 35 years now. And yeah, just kind of sharing some ideas. This started off, for those of you that don't know, started off during lockdown. Something happened and I wasn't too happy with what I read, so I did something different. And 3 years on, plus I'm still doing this, and it's really interesting. I've learned a lot in the process, but I'm gonna have to change this. I've said it before, I'm gonna have to change this. I'm gonna have to kind of upscale it a bit, based on a quote I read last week and interaction I got during the week from somebody. Good evening, Jerry, and anyone else who is watching this evening. So betrayal is a violation of trust, either in a person, organization, workplace, institution, religious organization, where we've really trusted and they have let us down big time. Because what's happened is there's been a violation of the trust. Trust is made up of loads of elements, but reliability, honesty, goodwill, competency, and openness, those things are really important for trust. And if they are broken or fractured, that's when we kind of feel betrayed. Yes, my pleasure, Claire, in terms of what I do. So, as I said, violation is betrayal is a violation of trust. And quite often we look at relationships, we look at sexual infidelity as the kind of number one thing, but actually there's other forms of betrayal. Things like being inconsistent, not turning up on time, being unreliable, not keeping your promises. These are all things that can lead to betrayal. We think it's just a sexual affair that causes the betrayal, but that leads to betrayal, but there's other things that lead to betrayal as well. Even if you're in a relationship and not contributing to the well-being of your family, that's a form of betrayal. And not being there if a partner is sick and unwell or hurt and you're out doing something else, that is also a form of betrayal. And sometimes when that happens in a relationship, coming back from that is really, really difficult. Very, very difficult indeed. So not keeping promises in relationships, keeping secrets, that's really difficult. Gaslighting is something that I've looked at before. And the other thing that's a form of, it is a betrayal, putting down your partner in public or insulting them in public. Or if you're getting into an argument with your partner, you then start insulting them. For me, that happened recently with a friend of mine, and she messaged me to say that she and her partner got into a big argument, and then he started insulting her. And for me, you cross the line when you insult somebody when you're in a relationship, and coming back from that is really difficult. It's almost as like there's a breach. I know my mother's 88, and every wedding, she doesn't go out much now, but all, certainly pre-COVID, all the weddings when she was invited to speak, she would always end by saying this: "Good evening, Maxine. Good evening, Maxine." My mum would always say this. She said, in all relationships, you hit a plateau when things don't go well, things don't go right. But she said, always have respect for each other. She'd always used to end that, always have respect for each other. Once respect has gone, that's pretty much the end of the relationship. And for me, once you start insulting each other in the relationship, now, if you want to continue that way, well, that's fine. If you have children, that's less fine. But if as adults, that's how you want to conduct your relationship, brilliant. But my friend who messaged me to say that her partner had insulted her and continued to do so, the relationship is now ended. When you insult somebody in a relationship, you betray them, it cannot continue. Cannot continue at all. Good to see Jeff, and also from the youth from different parts of the UK. And I believe there's other people from different parts of the world as well who watch him but never comment, but they watch religiously, I should say. Okay, so we looked at what's happening in the workplace, kind of betrayal in the workplace. Somebody commented that they were betrayed at a particular workplace and it took them years to recover. Even though they left, it took them years to recover. And I remember working with somebody some time ago who was betrayed at work, and when the person went back, they had a little bit of time off work, and when they went back, they said their body tensed up. They couldn't go back into that building and relax, and they've been able to get a transfer. And if you're in a place where it's not a big place where you can't get a transfer, one of the things you may have to do is seriously consider leaving. And the thing is as well, it's very difficult to function well if you're in an environment where you've been betrayed, because you're forever looking over your back, you're looking over your shoulder. So if you can't leave today, as has happened in time past, when people said to me, you know, I'd like to leave, I can't leave today. But then I say, could you leave in 6 months' time or 9 months' time? Yes, I could. Well, what plan are you going to put in place to help you make that? So it's a kind of, there's an exit strategy that you need to kind of do in terms of leaving the place. So some of the things, a betrayal in workplaces, gossiping, backstabbing, you know, we know all about that. And also for leaders and managers, if you know of any leaders or managers, I'll get this on YouTube and forward it to them. If you're a manager, well, in fact, a leader wouldn't do it. But if you're a manager, you do not publicly humiliate people or dismiss people or dismiss their, dismissing in terms of their contribution. You don't dismiss it at a meeting in public. That is not good practice, not good managerial practice. And then you don't get the best out of people. The reason why I said a leader wouldn't do that, leaders are there to empower people. And if a leader does do that, one is not a very good leader, or she, but if they do that and then they realize what they do, the first thing what they've done, the first thing that they need to do is to apologize. And they say, what has just happened should not have happened, and I apologize for my behavior. If you insulted them in public, you then apologize in public. I've been there and I know, and it doesn't decrease people's thoughts about you, but it elevates how people see you, because you've had the courage to actually say sorry in public. So what happens in an environment where people are betrayed, the word now is a kind of psychologically safe, but that's a psychologically unsafe environment. And psychological safety is the belief, if you make a contribution or you make a mistake or you do something wrong, that you don't fear being dismissed, suspended, or sacked. Where there is no psychological safety, leaders won't perform as best as they can, and the team won't perform as best as they can. We don't have time to kind of explore the fullness of psychological safety, but one of the things that we can do to develop a psychologically safe environment is to listen and to appreciate the person's contribution to a project or something. So good evening, Norma. So this whole thing in the workplace is really important. Things that lead to other things that lead to betrayal: discrimination, harassment, bullying. It goes on in the workplace. Seeing the stuff that's happening in Spain at the moment, maybe not the workplace, but a very public thing, and people have kind of stood up and say, no, this is wrong, and we need to do something different. So the whole thing around the workplace. One of the things about betrayal in the workplace is this: something happens and you are left carrying the can when other people could have stood up and said something. But people, what they do, they keep their head down and you're left carrying the can. That is a massive form of betrayal. And then when that happens, you don't know who you can trust. Sometimes if you're a manager or a leader, the meeting takes place, the meeting is occurring, and you, or you may not be a leader, but you make some comments which perhaps doesn't go down too well with the person who's moderating the meeting, and they let you know about it. And then when you get into the car park after the meeting, people are saying to you, you know, what you said was right. Don't tell me in the car park. You should have said it in the meeting. So that's a massive form of betrayal when you should have said something in the meeting, so the person moderating know that this is not the opinion of one person or the thought, it's a group of us. It's no point saying that in the meeting when you're about to get into your car, because you should have said it in the meeting. So what will happen with that individual who made that comment, if they're not somebody who's courageous, they will stop. They'll turn up to the meeting, won't make any contributions, and they'll go home. And then what the manager or the moderator would have done, you would have lost a skillful ally, a very good ally in the meeting. So it's something to kind of listen to and be really important about. So the great cost of betrayal is loss of job, relationship, finance, health. I've certainly shared about people losing their hair, IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, other forms of autoimmune deficiency, autoimmune illnesses due to betrayal. Really kind of important. So security, health, and in some cases where people have been betrayed. So I've just seen something where people have been betrayed. Some people can actually take their life. So yeah, Maxine, yeah, if you go, you need to go, no problem at all. Okay, so the whole thing about betrayal is like a tsunami has happened, a tsunami of one existence, and there's a whole Claire has said that when she was actually betrayed, she lost her hair, gut-wrenching, heartbreaking. It really is when we are betrayed. Yes, please watch on catch up, please do. When we are betrayed, when it really gets to us, the whole range of things can happen to us, and sometimes people don't understand, but it's the impact it's had on you. One of the things I hear so often in the counseling room, well, Delroy, there's far worse things happening to other people. And I always say, yes, that is true. But I'm interested in, how is this thing affecting you? And that's the thing I really I want to focus on. Yeah, there's always worse things happening to other people. But then the impact is, what is this thing doing to you as you're experiencing it? That's really important. So the effects of trauma or betrayal trauma, intrusive thoughts. Intrusive thoughts are disturbing thoughts that we don't seem to be able to push to the side or ignore. They kind of prevent us from thinking properly, functioning, sometimes even sleeping. And one of the thoughts that there's a kind of sense of bewilderment. How could they? How could they have done this? All that I've done for this company, all that I've done for this person, all that I've done for this religious organization, this religious community, how could they treat me like this? There's this sense of bewilderment. You don't know it doesn't make any sense, because you've been loyal, you've been faithful, you've been commendable, you've been diligent, and then the rug is pulled from under your feet and you're in a real mess, a real tizwas for those of us who were raised in the 70s and 80s. So betrayal can lead to sense of inadequacy, feelings of shame. And one of the things that happen for some people, they can't articulate what has happened to them. It's almost as though they have lost their speech. Happened to a friend of mine recently. Won't go into all the details. somebody you'll never meet, so no need to mention names or anything. But the trauma of what she went through, she said to me, we met some time ago, she said she's going home to do some exercises. So I thought, oh, right, great. She's going to do some gym work. So I said, oh, right, you're going to start doing some gym work? She said, no, some exercises from my speech therapist. I've had to relearn how to talk again. That's because of being betrayed. The impact it had on her, really devastating stuff. And she said to me that I'm not half the person who I used to be, and quite rightly so at the moment. So the whole process of healing takes time, anywhere between 18 months to 3 years, some say. And for some people, they never ever recover properly. There's always a level of suspicion. What people are going to do? There's a kind of general mistrust of people, of relationships. And I see this a lot with women who have had multiple broken relationships. And quite often they're attracted to the same type of guy. So then part of the work is they're not looking at these various guys, but what is it about you that's continually attracting to a certain type of individual? And once there's that understanding, then they can begin the process of unpacking it. But what happens quite often, we don't go any further because of fear, because of what's happened to us. We haven't recovered from the first or the second or the third. And instead of dealing with the first, second, third, we just kind of carry on. Instead of kind of looking at some of the stuff, we need to take some time out and look at what's happening. What have we done to contribute to this relationship? Why am I ended up with this type of guy again, or this type of woman? Why do I keep doing it? Asking those questions and doing some probing. That in those moments in time, seeing a therapist is really important to help you to understand what's taking place. Norman's asked a very good question. Can you ever truly recover from betrayal? It depends on the level of the betrayal. It depends on who. It depends on the process. But I think this whole thing about forgive and forget, I'm not a believer in that at all, because I think this whole thing about forgetting, I think I understand the sentiment. The whole thing about forgetting, you can't forget because you'll have visions, and so sorry, you'll have images and so forth. What my understanding of forgive and forget is, if you remember the scenario, it's not then attached to the emotion, because quite often it's the emotion that causes the problem. So can you ever truly recover from betrayal? I suspect you can get quite far, but the scars of the betrayal always remain. And maybe what you need to do in terms of going forward, you go with a level of caution, a level of discernment. And if you feel that things are unsafe or you're not sure, you stop, think, and then maybe back out, or you then maybe change your boundaries. But ever truly recover from betrayal depends on what. And certainly for people who've been sexually abused or sexually assaulted, no. No, it goes. I've worked with women who have been sexually assaulted, and no, they can bury it, and they can function with their lives. They can, but there can always be a kind of a remnant or residue of what takes place. I think Claire's got a different opinion. Yes, you can recover, but you become very deeply aware on levels you didn't imagine, and have to be aware of hypervigilance, paranoia, heal and hold again. So well, obviously it depends how you understand healing, of course. And I think, Norma, what you've said is a really good question. It depends what you understand by healing. I'm not sure if I believe in healing where you're totally, it's gone. But I think Claire has made the point that you can recover, but your life changes. You become deeply aware of what's happening. Where in time past you might have taken things for granted, now you're just kind of more hypervigilant, maybe hypersensitive. You're just not the same. So you can recover, but I think there's things that change in the process. Change for your safety, of course. But yes, I hope that helps in terms of your question. So between 18 months to 3 years, and that's if you do something with it. If you bury it and don't seek help, all it does, it festers, and it doesn't really kind of go anywhere. But in fact, it doesn't go anywhere, but it causes problems later on. So sometimes you can be in a relationship with a guy or a woman, and they're a really good individual, but you don't trust them, and it causes major problems in the relationship. Sometimes people get as far as marriage, but it causes, or long-term relationship, but it causes significant problems in the relationship because the person hasn't worked through, processed, or worked through the difficult emotions around being betrayed. But it can cause a lot of difficulty. And the person they're with can be really nice and loving and caring, but highly suspicious of what they're doing. So how we recover? One of the things I always say, when things happen to us, the first thing we must do, as tough as it is, we must acknowledge our feelings. That's really important. That's the first step for recovery, for healing, for moving on, for progressing, acknowledging how we feel, the emotions surrounding the thing that's taken place, or the betrayal. Also being aware of what triggers us. It's really important. And also name the emotions. One of the things about naming the emotions and talk about feelings is simply this: if we keep feelings hidden, we remain, quite more often than not, a prisoner to the feelings. So one of the things in counseling, that you want people to talk, even though sometimes I know what people need to say and I could say it, but they need to utter the words. So then once they've spoken the words, they are no longer a prisoner to the emotion that maybe have kept them prisoner or bound for years. So this talking about naming the emotions is really important for us moving forward, feeling liberated and making progress. Other things about recovery: take care of your body. Listen, when you have been betrayed, and I say before, betrayal cuts deep, and it cuts deep within a religious setting and relationships. So when you have been betrayed, you really have to look after your body, because your body has taken a pounding, and quite often the pounding that it's taken is invisible. There's something like 12 or 13 different systems that work together in our body to keep us healthy and whole. And when we have been betrayed and it's really rocked our world, all those things are affected. It's not just a case of somebody's betrayed me and that's it. Our immune system is affected, our blood pressure, anxiety levels is affected, our immune system, the floating brain. For those of us who may be familiar, we have the one brain in our head, or in our heads. We have the floating brain, which is the immune system, and we have the gut, which is also another brain, they call it, and then the largest brain that we have is our skin, all receiving information, bringing it to the brain for the brain to function in certain ways. But also the skin, not only does it receive, but also it protects as well. So when we are betrayed, it's not just an incident, but it's actually what happens to us. I'd almost say existentially as well as physically. So when we've been betrayed and there's a kind of sense of bewilderment, the whole world changes. Our view of the world changes. Our belief in people changes. Our belief in relationships changes. Maybe if you're a person of faith, your belief and understanding of God changes. So it disrupts everything. Hence, that is not to be taken lightly. One of the things, all right, okay, here we go. You can learn to protect yourself from this ever recurring, yes, especially when the same person repeatedly betrays you. Yep, as painful as it is, it's time to make a break from that person. Absolutely correct. In fact, the next thing I was going to say, take time out if you can. End the relationship. Sometimes there are some people, they're not good for us. They really aren't good for us. There was somebody. This doesn't sound, but I want to make a point. Somebody I visited in terms of one of the jobs I did at one time. I visited somebody, and somebody said, "Oh, did you visit so and so?" I said, "Yeah, I did." And they said, "Oh gosh, when you finish visiting that person, what was the word? When you finish visiting that person, you feel as though you want to slit your wrists." So being with individuals like that, a drain. So there's two types of people. You've got radiators or drains. You can't spend your time around people who are drainers. And certainly, as Ray has rightly said, that you sometimes have to take a break from the person. Sometimes you have to take a break for good. Also, what I'm going to say next, sometimes, yes, energy doesn't lie, as Claire's rightly said. Sometimes you have to take a break or leave the family. I remember working with somebody, telephone counseling, never met her, never ever met her. We had quite a few sessions. And if I remember correctly, she moved away to another country. And I said to her, look, if you're going to move away, brilliant. And I think she did. But maybe just once or twice a year, just send a card or a little short note to the family if you want to. You don't need to put your address in to tell them that you're okay. So sometimes, yeah, good evening, Sharon. Again, in the work that I've done, there are some, I don't know why, sorry, Sharon, I don't know why I've clicked that one. My apologies. There are some families that are not good. It's as simple as that. I recall doing a presentation many years ago, and I remember saying it was about relationships, and I remember saying that there are some families you should not get involved with. And my wife said to me, you should not have said that. But I said, it's true. There are some families you don't get involved with. They're toxic. The dynamics are not good. And in fact, quite often the dynamics have been set in place by the parents. Kids come into the world innocent, precocious, absorbing, but the environment has been set by mum and dad or the main caregivers. So yeah, the whole thing around betrayal, really important. Thank you for that, Raymond, really helpful. Also, if it gets too much, you seek a therapist, and it could be just to get through the emotions. So then you kind of know where you're going. Sometimes when we're overwhelmed with emotion and our psychological well-being is affected, we can't think clearly. So sometimes we need a therapist or a sounding board, or somebody who listens really well, won't analyze or probe stuff, but or won't interpret stuff, will give you the space to kind of process the emotions. And then sometimes, quite often, when the emotions have settled, then we're kind of quite clear where we need to go next. Also, find a support group as well. If you've been betrayed, find a support group who will help you. And you don't need loads of people. Sometimes 2 or 3 people, not yes people, will walk with you, sit with you, allow you to be really horrible and yeah, as young people say now, instead of saying, oh, back in my day, if something wasn't good, you say it was horrible. But now it's like, yeah. So I guess it kind of says it all. But so sometimes you just need to be in a group of people who can really kind of help you. I'm going to finish off with a quote. I think this quote really I got some interesting conversations this week from individuals from this particular quote by William James. I'm going to do some work on it. I'm not too sure how it's going to take place. I think after last week and this session, it seems to me I said I was going to be 10-15 minutes. I'm going to break. Look at me, nearly half an hour because I'm going to be finished. I think I need to be heading towards doing courses so that we can actually spend some time, maybe 90 minutes, 2 hours, really work at some stuff, do some breakout rooms work, so we can kind of either nail some things or kind of get a lot more out of what we're doing. But I'll keep you posted. But I do need to be moving in a new direction now. So in terms of what happens to us, I'm going to say the quote maybe a couple of times, say a little bit, and then we're going to finish. William James, the godfather of psychology. He wrote a book called The Principles of Psychology in 1890. This is what he said. If no one turned around when we enter, so the whole thing about betrayal could, if you return to the workplace, it could be that the whole work staff, like whistleblowers, you return to work, nobody talks to you. So you're there at your desk, nobody talks to you. And I read something recently about an African American woman who complained to her boss about what was happening in an office. So her boss said to her, take a log. The next 2 weeks, take a log of all the interactions. And she did that. She gave her the log. Every single day of the week for 2 weeks, she wrote nothing. So her boss said to her, I don't understand. She said, I thought you were being harassed. She said, yeah, I'm there and nobody interacts with me. Nobody says hello. Nobody asks me a question. Now, that work environment is horrendous. And that's a form of betrayal. And hear what William James says. If no one turned around when we entered, answered when we spoke, or minded what we did, but if every person we met cut us dead and acted as if we were non-existent things, a kind of rage and impotent despair would before long well up in us, from which the cruelest bodily torture would be a relief. Somebody said to me, Deborah, I heard that quote. What does it mean? I said, it simply means this. If you are ignored long enough as though you don't exist, being tortured would be a relief than being ignored. And they then got it then. That's what that saying is really kind of driving at. Let me finish with an example. Sometimes when we see children are mischievous, always getting into trouble, it's not that they're problematic. Sometimes if you go to the home, there's a serious level of neglect or lack of love. And I recall one day being in a training session and somebody said, what is the opposite of love for children? And we said, hate. The trainer said, no, the opposite of love is being ignored. When children are mischievous and get into trouble and get on teachers' nerves, at least they're getting attention, which they're not even getting anything at the home in which they're raised in. So being ignored is horrendous. Even those of us that are listening on this today, as adults, we know how painful it is if we're ignored. How much for children who haven't learned coping skills and way of being in an environment where they've been ignored. Powerful quote, absolutely powerful. And I think with the subject we've looked at and the impact it's had on people in terms of the conversations I've had online, DM and so forth, I think I need to explore this a bit further to help us get some healing and so forth. So thank you very much indeed. Thank you for your time. I went over way too long, 10, 15 minutes. I'm really kind of quite boundaried, you know, but I kind of got onto a thing today. I got really excited about it. So please, thank you very much for staying with me. For those of you who are silent, listen, I really appreciate your time. And those of you who might be in another part of the world, also, if you understand English, I appreciate your time. Those of you on catch up, I appreciate also. And all of you, enjoy the rest of your evening and the rest of your week. And next week, we'll be back, we're back to the normal time of half an hour. Anyway, take care of yourselves and enjoy the summer, sort of. Anyway, do the best you can. Take care, everybody. All the best. See ya. Bye-bye.